Hey, Foundry Church, I believe our story is worth remembering. When we started this church, we knew that God had called us to reach the un-indeed church. I'd been a youth pastor for about a dozen years, seen a lot of students leave the church. We wanted to start a church where people felt welcome and at home. So I'm going to take you on a road trip. Every time we hire someone new at the Foundry who hasn't been a part of us before, I take them on a road trip just to tell them our story and our history. And we're going to do that real quick together. Come on. So this is it. We're out at Friesland Reformed Church. We started in this building right here. We put a big banner up there, but we started small. It was super small when we started. 21 people. It wasn't really growing. We were struggling, trying to figure it out. And there were these early evangelism efforts we did, but we started doing those after help showed up. I'll never forget Mike and Pam Shermer came out. Eric and Lindsay Bazan ended up coming out, and it started to grow, and we did this pumpkin parade where we just had a float in the parade, and we were all wearing Foundry gear. And then after that, we had, I think it was a daddy-daughter camp out here in the gym, and it was so fun, and all the girls like painted us up. We looked rough. Sherry Vandenbosch would bake cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings. Oh man, it smelled so good. But it was just really fun, and we had these things that made it feel like home to us. It was home for our kids, and they just had so much fun because it was their little home, and our church began to grow, and it was time for us to leave here and find a new home, and that takes us to Ben's Hope. So we're on the road to Ben's Hope right now. Ben's Hope was our summer location, really, why we built Main Street. And Ben's Hope was perfect because they only used their new building in the evenings on Sunday, and we needed a Sunday morning facility. So for us, it was ideal. And we rented from them. Just a great location for us as a church to maybe find some of our own identity. We were out from under our parent church's roof where we had been living, and we were figuring things out for ourselves. And I think Ben's Hope gave us that opportunity to stretch our legs a little, find an identity. And the strange thing is, even though it was 12 miles northwest of where we started, it started to grow again. And we grew and grew, and by the end we were full. Ben's Hope has been a huge part of who we are. And here we are in the cusp of building our new facility in downtown and growing, and the excitement just began to build. But we'll talk more about that when we stop at the main building next. So here we are at our Main Street building. It's not ours anymore, it's actually Grace Fellowship. But we built this. And it was really cool when we found it. I knew that God had put it on my heart, no debt on this. We did this. It was a $1.3 million building campaign. We did it debt-free by the work of so many volunteers. We worked here night and day. It was awesome. But the crazy thing that happened is we move in, we do it debt-free, we lease this building. The first Sunday we outgrew it. We were like, oh, what just happened? There was 900 people, and it just kept growing and growing. We're seeing more professions of faith, and it was such an exciting time because we knew God was moving and we got to be a part of it. So we outgrew this building, even with campuses and Steel Rooster and Foundry West. We just couldn't find enough space, so we started looking at, okay, let's build. And we started Foundry Live, the construction on it, but then there was this little thing called COVID that hit, and everything changed from there. We moved out of here. We never actually got to have a goodbye service here, but we moved into our new building and started filming and then gathering there. God's been so faithful every step of the way. God's been reaching the unchurched and the de-churched, and we will not depart from that mission of us evangelizing, sharing our faith in the everyday, ordinary lives we live. So as we take off and we're headed back to the Foundry Live building, I think the thing the trumpet I would blow the loudest on this is God's faithfulness all along the way. In every step, when we were confused, when we were frustrated, lost, God has provided everything we needed, from volunteers to do all the work and work together for staff to build this. Financially, God's provided miraculously every time. I think every week when we see what God brings in and we're able to do the mission of the Foundry Church, it's so wonderful. And the thing I would like to say is it's God who's been faithful every step for the Foundry Church. And my prayer and my hope is that no matter who works here, leads here, worships here, that the testimony will never change, that the history and the future of the Foundry Church is rooted in one thing: the faithfulness of God for His church, the bride of Christ. That was a lot of fun to look at that video and remember where we were. It reminds me of something that happened when Erica and I, being history nerds, took our children to the East Coast to discover the early American history of the East Coast. And they got to go to Ellis Island. And we took them out Statue of Liberty, then we went to Ellis Island, which is two different islands. And we were in this museum of Ellis Island. And of course, being dorks, we were reading all the things on it. And at our parent church, there was a season at Friesland Reformed Church where every Sunday they opened the worship service with this song called "We Will Remember." And it went, "We will remember. We will remember." And it was a dirge in my mind. And it was hilarious because it became kind of a family heckling point. We would sing it to each other and people would shout back like, "How could we ever forget?" It was awesome. And Erica and I are standing in Ellis Island looking at this little historical plaque, reading it, and we hear Josh start singing it. So we look over, and he's got his arm around some woman he thinks is his mom, but it's not Erica, and he's singing "We Will Remember" to her. And then he goes, "Oh my gosh, you're not my mom." And we will now never forget that, right? That song is tattooed on us because of that moment. But the fact is, we must remember. We have to remember. We have to do what God did in the Old Testament and go back and remember the stories. We have to remember His faithfulness. Moses is a great example of this when he speaks to the children of God, the people of Israel, in the book of Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy 3:32, 7-9, it says this: "Remember the days of old. Consider the generations long past. Ask your father, and he will tell you, your elders, and they will explain to you, when the Most High gave the nations their inheritance. When He divided up all mankind, He set up boundaries for the peoples according to the numbers of the sons of Israel. For the Lord's portion is His people. Jacob is His allotted inheritance." Moses knew that the people of God must remember God's faithfulness so that they wouldn't behave like children who weren't loved. He knew that they needed to remember, but so very often, the children of Israel behaved as children who acted like they were not loved. They ran off and did terrible things. Look at this. This is from verses 5 and 6 out of Deuteronomy 32. It says this: "They are corrupt." Same song that we just read out of. "They are corrupt and not His children. To their shame, they are warped and a crooked generation. Is this the way you repay the Lord?" It says, "You foolish and unwise people. Is He not your Father, your Creator, who made you and formed you?" And then it goes on, "Remember the days of old," right? Don't be a crooked and warped generation. Moses knew that taking the time to ask their elders the stories, to remember God's faithfulness, would take us out of the crisis of the moment and let us see the greater perspective of God's hand over this people, who God was and who God always will be, that He would lead His people back to Himself. It is important to stop and take note of all that God has done, to remember His faithfulness, for Israel, to remember that they were chosen. They were a chosen people. It says this in Deuteronomy chapter 7, "The Lord did not set His affection on you and choose you because you were more numerous than other peoples, for you were the fewest of all peoples. But it was because the Lord loved you and kept an oath that He swore to your ancestors, that He brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the land of slavery, from the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that the Lord your God is God. He is the faithful God, keeping His covenant of love to 1,000 generations of those who love Him and keep His commandments. But those who hate him, he will repay to their face by destruction. He will not be slow to repay to their face those who hate him. Therefore, take care to follow the commands and decrees that I give you today. Take care to follow these commands. Remember God. Remember that God delivered them. They were to remember that they were once the least of all people. That they were a nation that came out of nothing. They're a nation born out of two 100-year-old people who couldn't have kids. So they knew that they were nothing. God delivered them. He chose them and delivered them. So we look at this and we remember that we must go back and remember how God had delivered them, how God had his hand on them. Moses was instructing this so that they would not stray from the story of their walk with God. God had protected them, provided for them, given his presence, and atoned for their sin. He had made for them a moment where they were a people, not a slave people, but an independent people. He gave them the Passover, walked them through the waters, like divided the waters, and they walked through the Red Sea. All these things happened, and God provided for them by a pillar of fire at night and a pillar of cloud by day. He would guide them and lead them and protect them. The lands that they conquered, the people that the way they were fed in the desert miraculously, the way their clothes didn't wear out, God would deliver them and provide for them and do all these things time and time again. And they were to remember this when they settled in the land. So remember, God has been with us through every moment. We are taking time today to just recognize and remember God's faithfulness at the Foundry Church, at our family. He built it from nothing. We started with 110. I grew it down to 21. And then we kind of gave up. We're like, maybe this is a mistake. But God got involved and he provided every step of the way. If I had to write a book on the Foundry Church, it would be titled, I Hope You Were Watching, because all we did was obey. He provided everything. This is by the skill of no person. It's by courageous obedience to the calling of God and his faithful provision. We look at it and we remember every volunteer, every good advisor, every penny, every moment of refinement. It is a foundry after all, right? And every needed staff member, every worship space, a gym, a place at Ben's Hope, a worship space out there, an old grocery store next to the Dollar General, who is super glad we're gone. But right there that we fixed and built up, from being debt-free there to building this new space, to new campuses and opportunities. We look at it, every cup of coffee, every devotional, every profession of faith, every moment we come together for a moment of grace at the Lord's table, we remember one thing: God has been faithful and he has provided for us. He has been with us every moment of the journey. And today we celebrate the one thing that is our witness. God is faithful. God is faithful. And that is what we celebrate on this day. Would you join me as we respond in song to such faithfulness?
Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever wilt be. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, join with all nature in manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. And all I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness, great is thy